Mayor and Council, tonight's work session, we have one subject, and that is Invest in Willmar projects. As you know from the past election, it did pass, and so therefore, over the next few years, we're going to be building some projects here in Willmar, and the mayor and I met to discuss how's that process going to work and what's the most efficient way of doing that, including community involvement and all the stakeholders. And so we sat down and we talked about how that process might work, and I'll show you a flow chart here in a second. But the first thing that you're looking at, and it's up on the screen, is basically a list of the facilities that were identified that were on the ballot that people had to consider, and we have some recommended amounts for each one of those facilities. And then I pulled this information that you're looking at right from the website, and this gives a brief description of what those improvements might be. But tonight we're not here to, I don't want to give the impression that we're here tonight to discuss the facilities. The main objective tonight is for you all to discuss how do we bring those projects up to you as the council to decide when they're going to happen and how much we're going to spend on those. And that's kind of that's the main purpose of tonight's discussion. So let's look at.
All right, maybe we do have some members of Invest in Willmar here.
Right.
So maybe we could thank them for their hard work on getting this passed.
Right.
So.
Well, you put words right in my mouth. So why don't we give them a round of applause and say thank you.
So we have Mary Sawatsky and James Anderson with us. And coming shortly is Matt Dawson and Tony Amon. They're just not here quite yet. So so if the council does have questions for them too, they'll be here to try to clarify what we're trying to do. So.
Right. Thank you. Sorry. I was going to get to that eventually, but so back to the process. So if you look at the flow chart, and I've put it up on the screen there, that's your second page, and you go down to the bottom. So you start from the bottom and then you work your way up to the city council. Basically, you have the community center, Robbins Island, stormwater projects, performing arts building, Swanson Field, athletic fields. So each one of these projects would have their own subcommittee, and they would have a leader of that group that would be designated by the council. And within those groups, based upon these descriptions that I showed you earlier, would start to develop the concept of that facility. And so they would say, okay, this is what we think we would like to see in it. This is approximately how big it will be, how much it will cost, these people will be able to use it, all of those type of criteria. And with that, they would come to some type of consensus, and then that's when it would go to the Invest in Willmar board, and that's they would seek their approval and recommendations. And again, it would go through a clearinghouse sort of process prior to it being taken to the newly formed Park and Rec Board, which we will have here very shortly, because it should be the responsibility of the Park and Rec Board to bring that project to the City Council. And then it's brought to the City Council for approval and recommendation. And then after that, you see where it says approval, it goes to the administration to start the project. So there's nothing written in stone that says this is the perfect thing. We're not here to say this is how we're going to do that. This was the first draft of what the mayor and I discussed. And so if you think that there needs to be an additional level, you think there should be a level removed, there should be, all of these ideas, that's what we're here tonight to discuss, is the process. So not the facilities so much, but the process. And so with that, Mayor, I think we just said maybe you'd like to make some comments at this time?
Certainly. And Matt, you're here now, so we did congratulate the group for the hard work. You remember the meeting that we had with Councilmember Nelson, myself, some people from the chamber, and Dave and Andrew. And they had asked us to see if we could pass this by 60%. You'll remember that conversation well, I'm sure. And I basically said that's never happened in Willmar. We can't get that high of a percentage. And pleased to report we passed it by 61%. So very good work. Your tireless crew of out there with the positive message, always spinning it in a positive way. When things came to us as a council, you revamped that and reworked it. And you know, the shining example of you listening to the council was when Councilmember Alvarado and Councilmember Osmus had the recommendation for the community center. And I remember you guys caucusing over in the side over there and, you know, how can we make this work? And I remember you coming up to me after that and saying, Mr. Mayor, we're not sure how this is going to work, but yeah, we're going to do it. And so your board was so receptive to what the council's desires were, and now we want to return that favor to you and be as responsive to you as we can and be as encouraging as possible. So I would just add to City Administrator Holland's comments is that we did meet with the Invest in Willmar folks as well on Wednesday last week, and we shared this with them before we brought it here, just in case there was a big hiccup that they saw, that we didn't bring something to you that they were not comfortable with. So in the overall grand scheme of things, they're saying they're okay with it, although I don't believe that your board has met yet to say thumbs up. But so the one thing that we did not talk about, or that I didn't talk about, is that Invest in Willmar board. And that Invest in Willmar board, and Mr. Holland, would you like me to go through that, or would you like to go through that?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, so that Invest in Willmar board, so if you take a look at the materials that's on the website and also the material that was presented to us, is that there will be a clearinghouse made up of members of the Invest in Willmar group. There will also be 2 council members, and we are recommending that the mayor get added to that list. So there would be 3 elected officials, although the mayor would not have a vote in the process. Then there would be a business leader. And I have reached out to Ken Warner with the chamber and asked him to supply me with 3 names. I think he supplied me with 15 names. So I'll be sending that back to him and asking, I know we wanted 3, so if you could narrow it to 3, that would be great. And so that's that piece. And then the other thing we talked about is having a community member at large. And so just somebody that would be out there that would represent the community in an impartial manner, if you will. It could be a leader within the community. The example that I used with Mr. Holland and Ms. Sawaski when we talked about this was that somebody like Doug Allen or a Teresa Wittenberg or somebody like that, and I use those 2 names because they're no longer in our community. And so somebody that had a presence within our community without putting a name out there where people all of a sudden go, oh yeah, we'll pick that person. So to make it a totally council-driven decision on who that community member would be. And so I would really like to see that happen as well. And so the rest of that board is made up exactly with what the Invest in Willmar people asked for. If you take a look at, if there's 2 people on the Invest in Willmar board, and there's 6 projects, if each council member took one of the projects, and the 2 council members went on the Invest in Willmar board, that would be 8 members. Isn't that surprising how that works out? So that's kind of a thought process that we put out there. The flow chart, could you drop that down just a little bit, Judy, for us? We're not seeing the top of it, we're just seeing white space on the bottom. The process you'll see is that the 6 committees would work and do their work. They would come up to the Invest in Willmar board, and it wouldn't go past the Invest in Willmar board until the Invest in Willmar board agreed that it was ready to go. Once it was ready to go past that, then it would go to the Park and Rec board. And of course, Rob Baumgartner will be the one that will be leading that charge, if you will. And then that again is an appointed board. We're hoping to have those names. I had conversation with Janelle today. We're hoping that they'll be on your agenda for next Monday. Is that correct? We're still working on that?
I spoke with him today, and I think we have enough names. So I think it'll be probably on the 19th.
On the 19th.
Yep.
And so then that would be approved at our meeting, the first meeting in December. That board would be formed. And again, by council action at our reorganization meeting, Councilmember Nelson serves on that board as the council liaison. When it went past those two steps, then it would come to the city council. And at that point, the city council would be involved in decision-making. And so everybody understands that if you're spending city money, which this will be, it's brought through the process by a community grassroots effort, but it is city money. And once it gets to the council, then that's where the council would vet it. And if the council approved everything that they had brought forward and didn't send it back to the park board for some clarification, at that point, it would be handed over to administration. And the administrator then would be responsible for implementation. The administrator would take suggestions from council all along through the build process, but the administrator would seek changes or get changes that would come out of the Invest in Willmar board. So at that point, the administrator would not go below that level. So the administrator would not go back to the community members. It would only be the Invest in Willmar board or the park board or the council. On projects like this, and Mr. Holland has had a lot of experience in dealing with these types of projects in other places where he's worked. And so it works best if we give the administrator the job, we tell him go get it done, and then he keeps us updated and briefed. And so I would anticipate we'd be having an update at every council meeting, would be where things are at and those types of things. And so he's not just going to go off willy-nilly and do anything. He'll keep us informed, but he has to make those decisions. We don't want somebody coming and saying, well, it's proposed to be a green room and we really want it to be a purple room. I think that's the example I used on Wednesday. And those are the decisions that the administrator will be making, because that input should have been gathered from those 6 committees coming up prior to that. So I'm very committed in making sure that this stays a community-focused project, because that's how it started, and we want it to stay that way. And Tony, thank you for being here. We thanked everybody. We'll thank everybody again. We're just so excited you guys did a bang-up job with this, so thank you so much. So at this point, we want to hear from you, the council. We did invite the Invest in Willmar folks here, and so if you have questions for them, they're prepared to answer those questions the best they can at this point. But then the other thing that you need to know is that next Monday at 10:30, we'll be meeting with Senator Lang and Representative Baker. And the Invest in Willmar folks have been invited to that meeting as well. And so we'll find out what the process is for getting down to the legislature. Traditionally on things like this, it's best if the mayor does that presentation, but if the council has something that they'd like to see different than that, that's what we want to hear about tonight. We want to hear how you want to be involved and how you want this to go. So I think I probably talked more than I should have, but Mr. Holland, do you have any?
No, I think you did an excellent job, and I think it's very important that the Invest in Willmar board, and I did go right over that, and I blame myself for not writing a note on that, but I think you did a good job explaining that, because even though the Invest in Willmar board is not an elected board or anything like that, they're making a recommendation. That's what it is. It's a recommendation, but they will have voting members on that Invest in Willmar board. Then they will take that to our Park and Rec board. And again, those people make recommendations. They don't make the final decision. Only the city council has the final decision in these projects. But it is very important, I think, that it goes through both of these boards, because I think by that time it's clearly been vetted and everyone's voice has been heard up to that point, so that you don't get to we don't want to get to the council meeting and have, some kind of conflict on a project that it's divided or hasn't been resolved, because that's the wrong level to be bringing that up. It should be solved at the lowest level possible. So that's one thing important. And then also I would just reemphasize that once we start a project, there's always changes, and generally 90% of the time those changes and change orders can be made by the administration, but that doesn't mean that there's a particular change that I wouldn't seek input from the 2 boards or the city council prior to making that change. So it just depends upon the situation, obviously, and you have to make a judgment call on what it is and how important it is. So,
Great.
Thank you, Mayor.
I think we'll hear from Mr. Dawson. Matt, thank you so much. I remember when you called me, well, I guess we really have to go back to the last local option sales tax when you called me a lot. But then when you called me and said you wanted to bring this project forward, and I appreciate your tenacity. And again, as I'd stated earlier, when roadblocks came up, you found a way to work around those roadblocks. And, you know, the hard work that your committee did is just to be commended. So, and my understanding is you'd like to make a few comments, so we'll go ahead and talk about that. And we're not talking specifically about the projects. You didn't hear the introduction of Mr. Holland, but we're kind of talking process today.
Yep. So kind of feel like I'm back on the Shark Tank here again. So, but it's a good feeling. Appreciate being here. We just want to, on behalf of the committee, Mary and Tony and John and Jim and many others, Jason Buteau, Rachel, a lot of people put in a lot of hours, and we really want to thank, obviously, the city staff, and I want to thank the city council and the mayor for giving us an opportunity to do this and see what we could do and take it to the people. It's been an unbelievable, interesting experience, and I certainly myself have a lot more appreciation for what all of you guys do when you're talking about people and everybody's money and the public and different things like that. So just want to thank all of you as well for giving us a shot. And we're obviously very excited, but we certainly know that there's one more very big step to take. Just a couple points that I want to make on behalf of the committee. We handed out the flyer here tonight, and certainly there's a lot of different materials out there that we were changing things weekly. But once we hit we had a couple meetings. This is kind of what we locked in on. This was an informational piece here. I wanted to just share that and have everybody maybe keep that as a reference, and just want to really try to respect as much as we can. This is what we took to the public. And just if we can certainly try to use this as a reference. I'm not saying every single thing, but we can't now, we got to deliver hopefully what we've promised. And that's what my goal is. That's what I want. And I'm not questioning anybody's intentions, but it's just something that I want to make sure that we try to stay in the focus here. And I realize these are concepts and there's some work to be done. So one of those things there. The other thing is, I think, just speaking from our experience, we would definitely need some assistance, and we're excited about the committee structure and the involvement, because we need help now going to the next step. So the committees will be great. We're looking for partners and teammates. We also know we're not going to agree 100% on everything, but we know that we can work together, because I think we just proved that the last couple months. So it's actually something that we're looking forward to. And then anybody that has expertise in the specific projects and areas that you've spent a lot of time in is what we're hoping you'd maybe participate in that area. There's a few areas here like the stormwater and the community center that I haven't been involved with, so I wouldn't be as valuable as other people. So just a couple basic points, and again, thanks to everyone here. We're obviously excited. We know we have one more big step, and we want to do everything we can with Andrew Lang and Dave Baker. So we're certainly not going to celebrate till that's wrapped up, but it's definitely a step forward. So appreciate all the support, and if unless you guys have any questions for us, we're ready to get back to work again here. So
perfect, thank you. And the council will remember the name Laura Becker. She was involved in the stormwater, and so I did reach out to her and ask her if she would be willing to serve on that committee, and she is just too thin right now so that she doesn't have the time to do it, but certainly we'll want to get some people at the table that have interest in the community. So that's the direction we'll be reaching out on some of those projects. And of course, Rachel Skretvet with the Robbins Island project. And again, I mentioned earlier, Councilmember Alvarado and Councilmember Osmus on the community center piece, and Swanson Field. So anyway, so up to the council for some conversation. Do you like kind of how we laid out the process? And again, today there's no rules. And today we're going to try to establish the rules so that we all know what we're doing moving forward. So that's kind of the objective. And I think what we talked about the last Wednesday is that at the retreat, this also will be an agenda item that will be at the retreat to talk about how we're actually going to structure things, because, Ms. Davis will be a sitting council member at that point, so. But, so I'll open it up to the council. Councilman Colorado.
Thank you very much. Salute to each and every one of you for the hard work. It was fun to see the signs out there. It was fun to see the vote come back positively. I'm very excited about these projects and the shine that they're going to give to our community. We have a lot of positive things going on right now, and this is just one of them. So I'm very excited about that. I hope that as we're going forward, we all have great ideas. We all have great ideas. We all want this or we all want that. But I think we have to step back and sometimes listen to somebody else's great idea and maybe have to compromise and maybe not stick to your guns, so to speak, or draw a line in the sand to move positively forward. So whoever gets on the committees, please keep in mind that we're working together. We're trying to make our community better, and we want to, we're not going to get our way, but if we can make it a success and compromise and get it done, let's compromise and get it done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Metzke.
Also, thank you. I think it's an amazing investment into Willmar, and it is going to serve the city very well for many, many years beyond the 13 years that we'll fund it. It's going to be, this is a game changer for the city of Willmar. Just as far as the structure is concerned, a lot of it makes sense. One that doesn't make sense to me is stormwater projects going through Park and Rec Board. That one seems strange to me. I'm wondering why that one and that only that one wouldn't go through Public Works or something like that. Because that's where the expertise for that is. These other ones, they're all Park and Rec, I get it. But stormwater doesn't feel like that's exclusively Park and Rec area.
That's where we talked about the surfing and
The Wade
no,
Park? The Wade
we
Park?
didn't talk about the surfing. No, you're correct in that, and I think the mayor and I kind of overlooked that as we were discussing that. We didn't. We just kind of lumped them all together. But you're right. The stormwater wouldn't go before the Park and Rec Board. That would simply be under the Public Works Department, and then the Public Works Department would bring that forward to the City Council like they do the other projects. So very good observation.
But did you want that one to go through the Invest in Willmar board first and then?
I think we should still do that, and then obviously we'll have our city engineer and public works director involved in that project and bringing it forward with our master plan.
One of the reasons why I hadn't pulled it out, and we did not talk about it specifically, although we did specifically talk about projects that would get to the administrator. So when it says administration, that'll be under the realm of the administrator. And the administrator will delegate. And so so on stormwater, as an example, that probably wouldn't be something that the city administrator, he'll probably give that to the new project manager that we hired, along with the public works director, but he would still be overseeing that.
Well, I understand that, but I would eliminate the Park and Rec Board approval piece for that because it doesn't. I would put the approval in the Public Works, and then it's because the administration is after that.
Right.
You got that?
Yes, I've made the adjustment.
Yeah, if I may, I'm sorry. If I may comment, Councilmember Metzke. What we heard from the voters or the citizens before they voted is that they wanted to make sure, and what we told them is that the Invest in Willmar Committee would help kind of steer those funds and make sure that they did go for those 6 projects and not get rerouted into the general fund. I mean, we heard that loud and clear from the citizens. So we want to, I think, however, that next line that leaves the Invest in Willmar board, to Public Works, that would make total sense for that because the other ones are surely a Park and Rec projects. Okay.
Councilman Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks all for being here. Congratulations on your initiative, all the hard work and time and efforts that went into it. The unique thing about a project like this, twofold. Number one, it's going to do huge things for the city in terms of bringing us up multiple levels in comparison with our surrounding neighbors in terms of, Park and Rec and our destinations and stormwater and infrastructural stuff. And there's a plethora of different things in here in which we're going to see some massive improvements, and that's going to bring us to a new level. Number two, the way this is being funded, unlike a lot of other projects, infrastructural and recreational, the tax isn't just being imposed on the citizens by the 8 of us. This was voted on by the majority, by the winning majority, so it had the support of the voters. So I think the next challenge is to do it correct and make them proud and do it right. I appreciate the multiple levels in the hierarchy that's contained within this flow chart, because I think the first thing that I thought of when I saw it was maybe a few retreats back, and we've talked about this a couple different times, governing or leading at 100,000 foot level. And this, to me, is the correct way of doing that, by starting very specific with different groups, committees, organizations, and being able to vet and hone the different projects, get those details all ferreted out before they get worked up through the final levels, because there's going to be great ideas coming from all different angles. And if it was just up to the 8 of us to shape these projects, I think it would look very differently than involving a large group of people. So I think that's one thing that I'm going to keep at the forefront of my thoughts when we're going through this stuff is take a look at the overall bigger picture of everything, and to take into account the level of expertise that we're hearing from the different committees. And I guess that's probably one of the biggest things, is making sure that the members of those committees, those different subcommittees and whatnot, are the proper people. And it sounds like we have the ability to choose wisely there, and it should end up with some fantastic end products. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Councilman Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you also to all of you. I know a lot of you worked on it the last go around, and at the Community Ed and Rec board table, I know we had lots of conversations, I think through the park plan and some of these other things. These things are things that have been worked on. I think this represents a great diversity for our community too, of different types of projects and things that people can work on. I know you listened to people and you made yourself available, and I am very pleased to see how much community involvement, engagement there will be at the beginning levels here. And so I just want to say thank you for that, and look forward to the next steps and working hard to get our approval at the state level. And I know, I hope that we will have a great representation to make that presentation when the mayor or whoever else goes down to do that, because I know that's important with that. But I think our community support has shown that this is the next good things for Willmar, and so I'm looking forward to that. So I just want to say thank you to all for the work that's been done for this. So thanks.
Councilman Romeski again.
I have a question about, I know we're talking about structure, but I'm looking at the steps on your handout, and I know we're at step 3, and we're hoping that that's going to work out well, and I have no doubt it will. Step 4 has to happen quickly, and then step 5, when we actually do the projects, my question is, how are we planning, because I heard this from folks, is what order will they be in? How do you plan to pay for these things, et cetera? There are price tags on these things. I happen to know that today dollars are going to be able to get us much more than tomorrow dollars. What's the plan or priority of how we're planning to unveil these things and roll them out?
Matt, if you can kind of just cover that a little bit, kind of on what we talked about, and kind of, as we went through this whole process from the first conversation you and I had to where we are today, and kind of try to put a bow on it somehow. The reason I'm not doing it is I'm not sure that I would do it justice, so.
Well, I think it's a good question. It's how we answer that question when we were out knocking on doors was we just basically said that, what's going to happen is the city will bond for the projects because we don't want to wait because the cost of labor and materials would go up so much. So there's bonding costs in here into the project. And then basically, as soon as they meet and they have their plans and they have final approval and it goes through the process, there shouldn't be necessarily an order if it's ready. If they all are ready, they should be. And I know there's some that are more ready than others, like Robbins Island. I know the baseball folks have been ready for a while. So I think the two projects probably that are going to take some time, might take 2 years, I don't know, would be the community center and planning that out, whether it takes that long or not, but designing that, and then the rec center.
Mr. Okins, maybe you can touch a little bit on the process as far as bonding and some preliminary conversations that you've had with bond authority.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, today we had some preliminary discussions with the bond council as far as the project since the referendum passed. We'll be doing follow-up conversations tomorrow based on what discussion happens tonight. One of the items they did talk about was trying to schedule, but that will be totally up to the council, and that would be worked into the bonding because you don't want to sell bonds and then sit there with the money if the project isn't going to happen for a couple of years. So we've had those preliminary discussions, and that'll be all part of the discussion that we will make available to the committee and the council as well as far as timing and making sure that the authority is in the legislation that goes to the state capitol. So we've had those preliminary discussions with follow-up tomorrow.
Oh, no, that's the right answer. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, and that's what I was telling people. I thought I would be on cue, is that we're going to do these things as the plans come, we're going to roll them out. So I think that's an excellent plan.
Mr. Holland, do you want to talk a little bit about process on project management and some of those stuff that you shared with me when we talked on Wednesday about making sure we don't have too many projects out there so we can make sure we do them all right?
I think that one of the key things that we have to keep in mind is each year as the council looks at not only the budget, but what we're trying to accomplish on each year is that, we have a city hall out there. We have a curling club that wants to build a facility. We have our normal street projects that go on every year. We have stormwater projects that go on every year. We have unexpected things that we go on every year. And so one of the things that I emphasize to the mayor is that we want to make sure that we put in a timeline for these projects. And the important thing of the timeline is that we're all on the same timeline. It can't just be the administration's timeline or the Invest in Willmar's timeline. We all have to agree that by this certain date, we're going to have the architectural design done. By 90 days later, we're going to have it out for bid. 120 days later after that, we're going to start the project. We cannot go through two of those and then all of a sudden say stop. And that's one of the things that I feel is important with this many projects is that we have to stay committed because today everyone is committed, but we cannot let one thing or, a small segment of the community say, stop this project or something like that. We can't get caught up into that drama. We have to stay true to our course, and with that, once we get the ball rolling, then don't stop. And it's just that simple. I know these sound, why is he emphasizing this? Sounds so simple. It's common sense. It is. But I've just seen that over the years with some of the projects that I've done that we've had some unnecessary delays. And that's the key word. They're unnecessary. And I'm ready to get started on the projects, and I think that we have several, construction companies and engineers right here locally. I think the Invest in Willmar group has already done a good job with the concepts of the projects, and so it really shouldn't take that much more work to get it done. But I just want to emphasize again that let's buy into the timeline. We're going to have that retreat in January, and I'm going to do my best to put down a timeline that we all can agree upon and that's realistic, and to get this done. And so that ties right back into the financing and everything like that. But, you know, to say that we have a few things on the, you know, the plate is an understatement, because like I said, look at what we're doing in other areas as well. You know, we don't have a huge engineering department. We don't have a huge administrative department. So we can only take on so much at a time. But I think that we can do a couple things at the same time. You know, some people said, well, if we start these projects, then everything goes on the back burner. No, we can do more than one thing at the same time. But we just have to remain united and focused and keep as best we can on the timeline. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Osmus.
Along with that timeline, I would think at some point here, we have to prioritize. Is that what we're going to be doing in January? Is the Invest in Willmar group going to be working on that before?
I can't speak to the Invest in Willmar group, but it was our intent, the mayor, or the administrator, myself, to bring this for you tonight, so you could start percolating it and then doing some of your due diligence before the retreat. And then our goal was to prioritize at the retreat on, you know, what we would like to see first. And the Invest in Willmar group will be walking hand in hand with us. What we've talked about preliminarily is that we would have meetings on Wednesday from 4 to 5 every week. And that's kind of what we've got out there right now, so that we can touch base and make sure. And, you know, it may be that we don't have anything that week and we just call each other and say, hey, there's nothing to talk about today. But we want to set scheduled meetings ahead of time so that people can put them in the calendar. And they can say, yeah, I can be there. You know, when we get to that Invest in Willmar group, you know, if you have the 2 council members plus the mayor there, you know, if you have, you know, not everybody has to be at every meeting. And, you know, we might end up doing like a subcommittee off the Invest in Willmar group that just touches base, and it might end up being the administrator and one person from Invest in Willmar, just to make sure that, you know, the message is consistent moving forward. So, but that key meeting of having a meeting once a week to just touch base and say, are we all lockstep still is very important. Particularly, you know, like I like to say, and I say it maybe probably too much, but not planning is planning to fail. So, so we need to have a good plan. If we have a good solid base when we take off here, that base is less likely to crumble, as the administrator had talked about. So
My only concern was when we were talking about the stormwater stuff, each one of the other projects, it's like people are going to have passion about what's happening at Robbins Island. They've already been invested in that. Same thing with Swanson Field. They want baseball fields and they want improvements. Community center. And stormwater is a little less glamorous. And so somebody has to be the voice for the stormwater projects and say, okay, all of these things are going on for the first year, second year, third year, but we got to work in a stormwater project here too. And that isn't going to be the last thing.
right.
But
And that was one of the priorities that the council had put out there. And so, you know, in last year's budget, you've seen $1.4 million for stormwater that we had not spent any money on it before. You know, we spent $1.4 million this year on stormwater. That was council directive. And so the administrator, the finance director, myself, and Councilmember Nelson put that together and made that happen. I think we have about 300,000 proposed in, help me, I said 300, I think that's wrong now that I said it.
Well, I think the stormwater portion, I think will fit in nicely with the systematic street replacement. And the engineering has already has some projected projects for that will qualify for the sales tax. So that'll fit in nicely with that schedule.
Right. And so I mean, so we have started putting money towards it, you know. I mean, we went for a number of years, you know, the council received the bar report and didn't do anything with it. But, you know, you made it a priority 2 retreats ago, and, you know, we put, you know, well over $1.5 million in it since you made that a priority. So, I mean, so we are doing that, and this will give us an additional approximately $7 million. But, you know, you say that it's kind of an unglamorous thing. I've actually had 3 people call me and want to serve on that.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, that's,
so-
and that's why I brought it up, because it
Sure.
is, it's an issue that a lot of citizens want to see addressed.
right, right.
And it may
So,
not be as organized as some of these other projects.
right, right. So, Councilmember Nelson?
I just had a question. Do we have an estimate on what the timeline might be at the state legislature from previous? Is it
Well,
early? Is it late? Is it any time? I'm trying to remember. I don't know.
There's 2 different ways, 2 different approaches, and that's what we'll talk with Senator Lang and Representative Baker about on Monday. One is you get there right out of the gate, and you're ready to go, you have all of your work done, you hit the ground running, and it's one of the first bills that gets passed. Then, hopefully, you would have that passed within the first 2 to 3 weeks of session. The other is, and what we were told, and you were in the meeting with Senator Lang and Representative Baker, is that you just clump them all together, and then you wait till the end, and then you don't find out until the end of May. So, you know, that's some of the direction that we want yet tonight too, is to, direction from you is, you know, how hard do you want us to push when we talk with our senator and representative, on where do we want to be in the process? You know, the Invest in Willmar people want us out front right away. You know, Mary's been already talking to some of her comrades down there at the legislature, and they're excited because, you know, people don't pass these by 61%. I mean, it just isn't the normal thing. And so there, you know, I was at a meeting of the regional mayors yesterday in Minneapolis, and I told them that our local option sales tax passed by 61%, and they said, "You got to be kidding me." Really? So, I mean, you know, so they said, your community's sending you a message, Mr. Mayor, you better listen. So, but, you know, 61%, we can't forget the 39%, but the 61% are the ones that spoke, so. So the answer is, I'm not sure. Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the Invest in Willmar group is encouraging us to go at it right out of the chute, we've got the momentum, we've got the numbers, I think we ought to go for it. I don't think we should procrastinate, lose steam. I mean, I would encourage the committee or whoever goes up there to be forward and try to make it happen sooner than later. This is very exciting. We've got some, I can't say it enough. I get very excited about seeing what's happening in Willmar, the energy that's behind this, the work that these citizens have done for the community, and I'm going to guess they're chomping at the bit. So I think we should let the horses run.
One of the disadvantages we have is our representative and our senator are both Republicans, and they're both in the minority. So we're going to have to work behind the scenes to get that support. So, Councilmember Nelson.
I think it makes sense, though, that when meet with them, to ask them, I mean, they're obviously going to carry this for us. So to encourage them and to say there is support to do this right away would be okay, and then look to them for their leadership with what they need to do to carry this forward.
So I'm hearing some consensus on the process that we presented. Is there opposition to that process? Because at this point then, what the administrator and myself and then you as council need to start working on, along with the Invest in Willmar folks, is getting people to serve on these 6 different subcommittees. And then the key piece is that Invest in Willmar board, and we want to get that Invest in Willmar board solidified at the retreat. Is where we want to do that, so that we have all of that put together. And then we'd come out of the retreat with our recommended names for the council to consider at that next meeting. The Invest in Willmar folks will be picking their own members to serve on that. And I can't remember, did we have 3 on there or did we have 4? We had 3, right?
3.
3? So there'll be 3 people from the Invest in Willmar leadership team that will be on that Invest in. And then the Park and Rec Board, you should have that approved not this, at this meeting, but you should approve that on the 3rd of December. So that board will be established. And then we just have to start working those committees. And again, we can't spend any money on any of these projects until after we have legislative approval. So I mean, we can't go out and start talking to contractors and or we can talk to them, but we can't spend money, or engineers or any of that stuff. We have to do that. So I see consensus on that. Mr. Holland, I don't see opposition. Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I assume we're going to reestablish the Stormwater Committee. There's several that were on it that are eager to jump back in again and see where we can spend this money. And can I assume that it will help our street projects in as much as total reconstruction involves stormwater, storm sewer? So that can be spent on total reconstruction? And we
That
can spread our...
That portion of stormwater, correct?
Yeah, so then we can go a little further with our street improvements. Sure. Okay, thank you.
And the one project that keeps being brought up to me is revisiting the Garfield project. And you'll remember that one intimately.
Yep.
So you worked hard on that one, as I recall.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, and then again, part of it will be an education piece. And we should start it tonight. Your street will flood. That is the first line of defense in stormwater. And so exactly what Councilmember Christensen said, if we have areas of town where we need to redo the street and we can drop that by, I don't know, 3 to 6 inches, and that can hold water, and you can increase the size of the storm, whatever you call it, sewer, if you can increase that size just in the pipe that goes down to where it connects to the rest of the infrastructure, there you have capacity. So, these are all great things we can do. So, right. So, I mean, that can start as early as the 2020 budget, right? Councilmember Nelson.
No, I just wanted to clarify, the stormwater talks about, one place it talks about continue to fund the master plan, and another place it talks about creating the master plan. So that's not what's in this, right?
No.
Okay.
No, the legislation states it has to be for capital. So it can't be for planning, it can't be for that. So if we're going to do that planning, that's going to have to be paid for out of the regular budget.
Okay.
So it's the actual capital projects that are authorized to be used.
I just wanted to clarify that because it was said a couple different ways, so.
Right, and I've had 2 calls on that in the last week. People asking that, are you gonna pay a consultant? And I said, it's not under the legislation, doesn't allow that. So.
I'll put a plug in for moving the project quickly. I mean, I believe we have a split legislature, actually. We have a House that's Democratic and a Senate that's Republican. And so what's the reason to wait? To me, it's, you have a split thing, you might as well go while the getting's good. And for me, it's these dollar prices, this is as good as it's going to get. And every day that goes by, these dollars go the other direction. So getting in as fast as we can and let's get these things going while we get the most bang for our buck. I'm in favor of that.
Okay. Mr. Oakens, I'm going to catch you flat-footed here. If you don't know, just say so. Do we know what the county's collecting out of Willmar yet?
I was going to ask that.
We've received some preliminary numbers from them because it will mirror those numbers. And it's been very preliminary first 3 months or so. So we'll get updated numbers for that and make it available to the council for next Monday's meeting.
For next Monday, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's running pretty close to what we had projected with the last one. And the numbers that the Invest in Willmar group used are pretty accurate.
Okay, sounds good. So then the next piece, so we've got consensus here to move that forward. And then the next thing is that committee, are you in agreement that the Invest in Willmar folks should be with us at the table going to speak with our legislator and senator?
Yes.
Our representatives?
Definitely.
And then how do you want, do you want any people of the council, or you want the administrator and I to do that, or how do you want to do that?
I suspect somebody from the council should be with you. I mean, the mayor is important to be on that, but I would suspect at least one member of the council be involved. And another suggestion I would have is, there's 6 items on here, and we have 8 council members, and each council member and 2 extra ones should be in charge of one of these.
Right.
And report to the council any of the meetings. There's going to be a lot of meetings, folks. This is a lot to accomplish, but that way the council is directly involved. Put one person on each one of these and report back, and then 2 floating ones and come wherever they want to go. I mean,
Yeah, on the opening comments, so the Invest in Willmar Board would have 2 council members, and then there's 6 committees, 2 plus 6 equals 8.
there you go.
It may have been intentional, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing that I asked is that if the council would consider having me on the Invest in Willmar Board, but not as a voting member. The council members would be voting, but the mayor would not be a voting member.
Well, you're going to want to be there anyway.
Right.
So
Okay,
Mayor.
so we need a council member to agree to step up to the plate to go in those discussions. Anybody interested?
That would interest me.
Councilmember Plummer, okay,
Yeah.
I'm interested.
okay.
I was going to suggest when you go to the legislature, yeah, I can, but when we go to the legislature, that there's multiple people speaking. I think someone from the Invest in Willmar group and the mayor or someone from the council to speak. And, you know, I think there are different things to share with why this is being brought forward. So I would think we'd want, you know, a good group there. And whoever goes, I think we had a great example with Highway 23 to make sure the right people are speaking on the right subjects. So I would look to Senator Lang and Representative Baker for assistance with what we need to say and how we need to say it. So
Okay. Yeah, they both carried New London Spicer's question 2 years ago, so. So our meeting is at 10:30 on Monday at City Hall. And so if you can attend that, show up there. So Councilmember Nelson, Councilmember Plowman, and Councilmember Osmus will be there. We will not know when we go down to testify until, I mean, sometimes you have 2 hour and 10-minute notice. And so, you know, hopefully we'll have more notice than that. But you can understand that, you know, we got to prepare the words, as Councilmember Nelson said, and then any of us have to be prepared to present those words. And so the message has to be consistent, so it doesn't make any difference if the mayor's speaking or a council member speaking or Invest in Willmar speaking. We have the same key phraseology that we're using. And we will market that probably in our meeting a little bit on Monday, but then we'll probably end up having a couple meetings after that to just get those words together so that we know the right words. And then, of course, we'll have to have staff go with us as well. It's a big investment for the city to do this, and big investment, as Councilmember Christensen said, for the council, because it will take a lot of time. You know, I think they're talking minimally, we'd probably end up having to present minimum of 3 times at the legislature. And then if we get moved to a House committee, then it might even be more than that, if we get moved to a House committee. So, but minimally, it would be the House, the Senate, and then the overall, is it Ways and Means? Probably is where it'll end up, so. And who's in, I heard yesterday who's in charge of that. Do you know who's in charge of that? Is it Portman? How do you say her name, Liz? She may be, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I was in a meeting yesterday. I think that she is in charge of that, I think. Okay, I have nothing else to come before us unless there's anybody else, anybody from the public that wishes to speak. Seeing and hearing none, if we have nothing else, we can adjourn. We are adjourned.
very exciting.